View, thank you very much for staying with us. Returning to our top story, you'd recall that we said that two former SABC employees have accused the public broadcaster's former interim board of flouting regulations and processes in awarding a security tender. You'd recall a bit earlier on we spoke to the former SABC head of procurement, Simon Mulawuti. Joining us now from our studios in Durban live is Ayanda Mkhize, who was a former SABC general manager of supply chain governance. Ayanda, thank you very much for your time this evening. Well, similarly, you had sat in quite a number of those meetings when this entire tender process was being discussed. You were in a position when the security bid was underway. At what point did you raise red flags and notice that due process was not being followed in this particular instance?
Good evening, Criselda. Good evening to your viewers. To answer your question, everything was going well with the process until the point where the matter was put to the Finance, Investment, Procurement and Technology Subcommittee, Board Subcommittee. There, we were asked questions as to why we were recommending the first highest ranking bidder. And a whole lot of questions were asked in that meeting. And I just felt uncomfortable. And that's what prompted me to send an email to the National Treasury to ask on what grounds can the highest ranking bidder be overlooked.
In speaking to your former colleague just a few moments ago, he said that in that meeting there were three members of the former interim board, Kanyisile Kweyama, Matata and Krish Naidu, who were in that particular meeting. And two of those, Mr. Matata as well as Kanyisile Kweyama, were the main ones who had raised questions about why the first highest bidder was preferred. Do you concur with the statements that were made by Mr. Mulawuti?
Yes, that's correct, Criselda. Yeah, that is correct.
Can you tell us what were some of the issues that they raised? Because you had informed them that this was the preferred bidder based on the points that had been scored, of course.
Yes, they raised the issue of the BEE. They said that the second ranking bidder had a higher BEE score than the first ranking bidder. So why are we recommending the first ranking bidder? And we were at pains to explain to them that the triple PFA doesn't work like that. You can't isolate price and BEE. You've got to look at the total value and recommend the highest ranking bidder. So, and that was one of the things that they raised. The second point they raised was that the winning bidders nationality is not South African, but this whole thing had been through SSA vetting and it had been vetted by internal audit, so we didn't know where that was coming from. So we just felt uncomfortable.
And allegations of score tampering, was that one of the issues that was also raised? I'm just trying to corroborate what Mr. Mulawuti told us as the SABC in the interview that we conducted with him a few moments ago.
Yes, Criselda, that was highlighted, but it was more on the fact that the interim board didn't seem to quite understand how an evaluation works. They didn't seem to understand that there's what we call moderation. At the end of every evaluation, we do what we call moderation so that our scores are not different. Just to give you an example, if you are evaluating for trucks, for the number of trucks, and a bidder submits a bid and says, I've got 5 trucks, the scores for that cannot be different. They've got to be exactly the same. One evaluator cannot say a bidder has 10 trucks when another one says 5 trucks, which is why we moderate. So the scores were changed at moderation stage, and that was clearly spelled out to the board. But at that point, I thought they didn't understand how evaluations work.
Now, can you confirm this for us? The SABC is also in possession of what looks to be an email that you had written to National Treasury, an official, concerned about this particular situation. Can you confirm, first of all, if indeed that email was written to you? And when you raised these concerns with the National Treasury, what was the response that you had received?
Yes, I sent an email to the National Treasury after that board subcon meeting, and I asked the National Treasury if we can overlook the highest ranking bidder. And the National Treasury responded to me to say, no, we can't. And that email was then sent to the company secretary, who circulated it amongst the board members. But the contents of that email were never discussed at the board meeting.
You know, Ayanda, why are you speaking out about this now? Of course, others could argue that perhaps you're a bitter ex-employee. Of course, you were fired by the SABC on the 18th of October this year. Some of the accusations that were leveled against you included issues of irregular appointment, recommending and awarding of particular contracts. Did you sit for a disciplinary hearing pertaining to that issue?
Criselda, yes, I did sit for a disciplinary hearing, which was scheduled for the 27th and 28th of September. And then it was postponed to the 5th of November. But to my surprise, on the 5th of October, I got a letter from the SABC intending to dismiss me, and they dismissed me on the 18th of October.
So did the disciplinary hearing sit?
It sat for 2 days, but it didn't go anywhere because I was requesting documentation, and part of the documentation that I was requesting was relating to the security tender. So I think they decided to just dismiss me without a hearing.
So you believe that part of the reason why the SABC dismissed you was because after those charges were leveled against you, when you asked for documentation pertaining to this particular security tender, basically the SABC decided to get rid of you. Is that it?
Yes, Criselda, that's correct.
All right, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Ayanda Mkhize, who is the former SABC General Manager of Supply Chain Governance, speaking to us, of course, about the security tender issue here at the SABC that continues to dog the headlines. We also extended an invitation for a right of reply to the lawyer representing the former SABC interim board. But upon being advised of the interviews of these two ex-SABC employees, Simon Mulawutsi and Ayanda Mkhize, who we just spoke to, the ex-interim board attorney Tebogo Malachi opted not to continue with the interview. He stated that the two employees have pending labour disputes with the SABC, which have nothing to do with the security tender, and therefore his clients will have nothing to do or contribute towards this show. When we did inform the attorney as well that they were in these positions when the security tender was out for bidding, they still refused to participate in this particular interview. Let's move on to other